And it went into my mind, and this is my relationship with God. I go, okay, who's going to be the slow driver on 138 when I turn right onto 138 off of 4? Because those of you who travel that route know that there's no passing on that section of 138. It's a double yellow line. And my experience is that there's always someone who's going just under the speed limit. And sure enough, I got what I prayed for. I got that person. And then my prayer life just really kicks in to where, okay, I'm going to back off about 100 yards because if I go on their tail, they're going to be oppositional and go even slower. So I'm trying to get into the head of the driver. Have you ever gone there? I mean, that prayer life is really toxic. I mean, it's like, it just drives me into a pit, and I'm like fantasizing about where this person's coming from. And it's just, it rents all sorts of head and heart space, and it closes off my heart. It's not like I'm praying for this person with gratitude for them ahead of me, or being open to the day around me, or anything like that. I'm just focused on that bumper, and I'm like saying, oh man, here's a hill, they're going even slower. And the whole drive. Then I talked to Peg Rostrup this morning, and she says, I had the most wonderful drive, I'm paraphrasing, wonderful drive today coming in from Saunderstown, where she's caring for Jan and Ann's cat while they're away. And she went across the fields at Slocum, which I've done too. And I've known my heart to open to the beauty of that expanse. And whatever was going on, the word you used, Peg, was epiphany. Yeah. And something just to open. Have you ever had that happen too? Where you're just driving along and suddenly something captures your heart opening? Something of your attention, and suddenly it's timeless. For me, it's been timeless and spacious and brilliant, and my heart's filled with gratitude for just the moment of being alive. And that's prayer too. So Jesus encourages us to persist in prayer. And it isn't always that prayer, in my experience, and I think probably in all of ours, is consistently the same thing. In fact, one of the readings that was offered for this morning on another track of the lectionary was about Jacob wrestling the angel. And you know that story of that wrestling that goes on, and he finally ekes out a blessing, and his name is changed to Israel. It's quite a beautiful story. And that wrestling was really hard. And then the reading that was offered this morning from the Old Testament talks about God working with our hearts and lives to give us hearts of flesh that really resound with God's law, where we just know deep within us how it is that God means us to be and how we are to be with life as it truly is, and to have this open-hearted acceptance of what it is to be alive in the world. And to be God's instrument in that world. And that's the vision. And it is a true vision. It's the truth of who you and I really are. But most of us, I think, don't always experience that. We don't always experience ourselves open-heartedly in contact with the God who's given us life and given us all things and called it good. And so we wrestle. We have this continuing knocking sometimes at the door, trying to get God's attention, and it's a mixed up bag. Sometimes when I'm trying to get God's attention, I've got prejudices and preferences and ideas about how things are supposed to be. Witness my drive this morning. And that relationship doesn't go anywhere. Or where it goes, I don't know, God's being gracious with me to just let me continue to do that. And then there are other times when prayer is a wholly different thing, where my petitions to God are connected with an open-hearted attention and a loving connection to the needs of my neighbor, to the needs of the world, to my own needs and those of my family. That is a wholly different sense of what it is to be engaged with the one who has given all life. So some knocking is going to start going on for you and I over the coming weeks. It's already begun for me because as a member of the clergy of this congregation, I, together with the elected leaders of this congregation, have heard from Dave Terry, who is preparing for the stewardship drive. It's going to be kicked off next Sunday. So he's knocking on my door, figuratively, not literally yet. He sent me a letter, and he said, would you please make your pledge before the 19th of October. Any of you who are elected leaders here or clergy, please, we need to make our pledge before the 19th of October. So as he kicks off his pledge drive on our behalf next Sunday, he can say he has 100% of the clergy and elected leaders already pledging. And so, on we go. So I don't know what it's like for Dave Terry to be knocking on the doors of all of us, but this parable, I hope it's not like this parable. I don't think it is, because I know the people of St. A's, and it isn't like they're sort of responding like the unjust judge and saying, well, because of the persistence of Dave Terry, I will write out my pledge card, even though I don't want to, just to get him to stop knocking on my door. My experience at St. A's, I think it's our common experience, is that people respond generously and naturally in so many areas of this life. And just look what's going on downstairs in terms of the renovations that are taking place. Look what happens in terms of the altar guild and the office staff. And I mean, it just goes on and on. The gardening, everything that happens here is the result of generous people. All of you, all of us, that are participating in the common life of this place. And at this time of year, we get to express that by a pledge, by making a commitment to a proportion of our income being sent to the church so that it can do its wonderful work in that way, because we have bills to pay and things that need to be done that only finance can take care of. So Jane and I have agreed that 10% of our earned income comes back to the church, and that's what we do. That's just how we've already wrestled that through as a couple, and we just know that that's just what we do. And there's great peace and joy about that and being able to do it. So I know that not everyone's circumstances allow them to respond in that way, but an open-hearted response is all that's really called for. You know, to have an open-hearted relationship with God that participates in how you fill out your pledge card. Pledging is a funny thing. It's not in lots of different arenas that we are asked to pledge. And pledging is a commitment, but it's also a commitment of faith, which says that there's room for revision. Because it's sort of like, well, I'm looking into the coming year, and if things go as I hope, this is what I expect things to be like for me. And so this would be a reasonable thing for me to be able to carve off and send to the church. This would be a percentage of that. You know, aiming for 10%, something along the way there. And then if your circumstances change, if my circumstances change, that heartfelt commitment changes too. That there's room, because the church is a relational place, to come back and say, no, my circumstances have changed. And I'm able to increase my pledge, or because my circumstances have changed, I need to decrease my pledge. So it isn't that there's any shame built into needing to renegotiate it. It's just what happens. And so all of us are meant to just be doing what we understand in a prayerful and sort of practical way. What does it look like for the coming year? And how can I participate in what's happening here at St. Augustine's in the financial way? Because I already participate in so many other ways too. Each of you can say that. And that's the beauty of this place. It's typical in congregations for it to be like 18% of the people are doing 100% of the work. That's not what happens here. It's like everybody does something. Everybody's involved. So everybody I hope you'll all be involved in whatever way is appropriate to your circumstances, and just help the treasurer know this is what you can plan on from me, unless circumstances change. That's what a pledge is. This is what I think you can expect to receive from me over the coming 12 months, the 12 months of 2017. And then they build a budget from there. So Dave's coming knocking at the door. And again, it's not like the parable that Jesus told, although, like the parable, he's persistent. I have to say that about Dave Terry. He's persistent. So I sent mine in right away. I didn't wait for the second ask. I went right in. So honor Dave's commitment, please. And as I honor the commitment of all of you to the life and ministry of St. Augustine.